We have 2 hours with 2 panels with the same panelist and no break. So we see how we're going to manage the topics. So we are getting to the real object of the workshop, which is the framework and the conduct of regulation. We start the panel with the views of the panelists on market analysis and more particularly on the concept of joint dominance. So just to cast the debate. So under the current framework for regulation, if you want to impose a remedy on a company that is not dominant or that does not have single SMP, you need to establish joint dominance. So this raises the question on how do you establish joint dominance? Is it the right criteria for the current conduct of regulation? Does it address properly regulatory concern and in oligopolistic situation? Is it the time to make a change? Or should we keep the test? Should we keep the test but change the way it is implemented, which is also a possibility? But of course, it's also an occasion to discuss the global framework for analysis. So if somebody wants to enlarge debate and question even the framework for analysis and market definition or issues like that. So I notice that nobody is questioning the list of markets that has been determined by the European Commission, and there may be a few things to say or to think about. Okay, so let's start. We are very late, so we may end up late. We'll see how the debate goes. But nobody has a train to catch, except me, actually. It's okay. So we start with Stephen Tass from, or maybe I should invert. So we start with Elizabeth, because you start in the first panel. Okay.
So is it ladies first or is it ladies' choice? If it is ladies' choice, I would prefer to go second.
Okay. I'd like.
How can I refuse the choice of a lady, of course? So, so I think the position of ETNO on the question whether do we need to make changes to the regulatory framework to deal with concentrated market or with oligopolistic situations, I think our position is rather clear and simple, so I can be rather brief, I think. We really believe we don't need new tools. I think the tools are in place, tools that are also used in competition law. You have the concept of joint dominance. So from that perspective, I don't think we need new tools. Yes, we need reforms in the European regulatory framework. That's what I already discussed before the break. So in order to make sure that we stimulate investments, that we have a lighter touch regulation for the market that has now evolved over the past 10 to 20 years. It's also the tools already exist today, and it's a fact that there has been very little evidence of any problems with joint dominance in this industry. And it's also because in reality there are no real problems. And I think in a lot of markets where you have a lot of infrastructure competition, you see a lot of very intense competition for innovation and infrastructure, which is good. I think also that's what I think Matthias also referred to. I think we must make sure that we don't invent specific rules just for this telecommunication sector. First of all, I think we must make sure that we apply the rules to the very broad definition of this digital industry. We should not narrow the discussion on concentration just on the telecommunication sector. Look at it in a broader perspective. But even more larger, I don't see why we need in the telecommunication sector other tools than in the industry industry in general in Europe for dealing with concentrated markets, and there are a lot of other concentrated markets in the industry. So I think that's very important, and I think it's also very important to understand that when you start to apply remedies or tools that you normally use for monopoly situations, you get very adverse negative effects. You can even destroy the incentive to compete, destroy the incentive to invest. So it's very important to be extremely careful for that. So that's in a nutshell our position.
Okay, that was brief.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you get much time. But now it is your turn.
Thank you. I think to address, I think specifically what we should look at, I think throughout the reform or the review of the regulatory framework, I think that the figure that I have cited, so that really that incumbent operators have 86% market share of subscribers in VDSL is indeed really quite striking. And I think that really suggests that when it comes to NGA, we really do need to reinforce wholesale access remedies. We have had a study carried out by WIC in 2012, which looked at the implementation of the NGA recommendation, and they found that actually it hasn't been implemented. Wholesale remedies, or even if they are in place, they are not effective or not effectively taken up. And now you look at two years later, the Commission data, and you see that actually the problems forecasted by WIC in 2012 have all come true because wholesale access is not very effective in many markets. Do we need new tools? I think certainly it is clear that markets are becoming more oligopolistic and more particularly duopolistic in nature. So indeed, there is infrastructure-based competition in fixed in 50% of Europe. So it's only 50% cable coverage. But that is a duopoly. So that is really just competition between two. Therefore, I think that the concept of joint dominance to address market failures in a forward-looking manner will need to be revisited. Joint dominance is a very strict test. It has been applied very rarely, only in 3 mobile market cases, so the former Market 15 cases by 3 NRAs. And there was only 1 attempt in the former Market 5 wholesale broadband access market by Malta to apply joint dominance unsuccessfully. So I think that in order to address the market failures of the future, we certainly need to revisit this. And maybe just one final point, because before you cut me off, I think is what is really important in terms of needing reform. I think, and Matthias has been addressing me quite a lot in his last intervention, saying that this framework has been designed not to last, that it has always been meant as a transitional framework. Well, I think that is really the point of reform. I think that is the recognition that we really need. We have deregulated from 18 markets to 7, now we are down to 4. Deregulation has taken place wherever markets could become and have become more competitive. But we are down to the bare bone, basically to the access layer of the fixed network, which is a natural monopoly or duopoly. It will not go away. And however many services, how many WhatsApps or whatever you will not have an app, or at least I'm not aware of it, that will provide you with broadband connectivity. And that will have, I think, very long-term implications, because actually competition and choice at the internet access layer is the building block and enabler of competition and choice at the services layer. And we see that in markets where that internet access choice is not there, they have enormous problems with the open internet. That hence the big net neutrality debate. So I think that basically really 2 points. Joint dominance, I think, really needs to be made functional. Maybe SMP guidelines need to be revisited and make sure that joint dominance concept can be actually applied. And also, I think in the review of the framework, we need to recognize that some bottlenecks are enduring, persistent, and unlikely to go away. Therefore, we should step away from the concept that this framework should remain deregulatory.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
You
you.
can follow on.
So as you have understood, I am a big fan of MVNO, and I believe that MVNO can help to bring the right level of competition, at least on the mobile market. That needs to be monitored. So today, because Market 15 has been suppressed, regulators tend not to really look at the access market for mobile, and I think that's a problem. And whether we should bring it back as a market, or official market of the European Commission, I don't know. But at least what should be done in each country is that the regulators of a competitive authority should have a look to the retail offer that the MNO is doing and compares those retail offer to what the wholesale price. And just check, if you take the most aggressive offer of your mobile operators, just to check which kind of margin you can get as an MVNO by replicating this offer. And you will find, because I did the test in several countries, since I got the chance to be in several countries, you see that quite often you have negative gross margin, as I mentioned. So what you do with that, that's a second step, but at least as a very first practical things to do, without any regulations, without any new law, I think regulators in each country should do this analysis to say, I take the most aggressive offer on MNO, and I see which kind of gross margin an MVNO can have by replicating that. And based on my experience, when the regulators do that, I know what is the reaction of the MNO. They adapt their pricing so that they remain reasonable. So that does have an impact. Now, in terms of remedies when in the case of a merger, what I see is that the regulators or the competitive authorities try to find a solutions which is kind of a short-term view. They say, okay, so I'm not expert about the German case, but I noticed to say we need to have a third and a fourth MVNO, which should have X% of the bandwidth. Then guys called Drillisch come and say, I'm going to take all this market. So it solves the situation for 1 or 2 years. But it's not something which is on the long term. And if you want to have remedies which last on the long term, taking into account all the change you have on the market when you see the evolution of data, how the market is going to change with 3G going to 4G, going to 5G, I think we need to have some kind of remedies which are revisited every 2-3 years, and that starts by an analysis of the market and a survey and a monitoring of the market, of the wholesale market, of the access market for wholesale. You can't find a solution just which works for 5 years, just not impossible nowadays.
Thank you. Everybody is very concise. So let's finish with the mobile industry.
Okay.
So let's
Well,
have the view of the mobile operator.
when it comes to the regulatory response, we don't think that telecoms require more regulation, and needless to say in this room that mobile markets, particularly at the retail level, have changed drastically since the liberalization of telecoms markets in Europe. Consumers are faced with a wide array of technologies and providers from adjacent industries who offer functionally equivalent services. We think that the mobile competition at the retail level is subject to competitive pressures from all sides, and we think that should be taken into account when assessing the framework. The new retail markets are not oligopolistic, with voice and SMS being classic examples of markets that are previously limited to licensed operators that now open to rapid exit and entry. And similar trends are observed across the service spectrum with innovation from all corners. Mobile wholesale markets have higher level of industry concentration compared to retail markets, but this is due to the factor of a combination of facts which includes the scarcity of spectrum. And we believe that a lot could be done in Europe when it comes to the spectrum assets, which could promote investment and competition at the same time. legislative debate on a connected continent file, we do not have big hopes and very optimistic about the big and bold spectrum reform that this legislative initiative will bring about. But we believe that the longer duration of licenses combined with spectrum trading could be a very important step towards a more competitive, a more predictable market. We think that concentrated markets structures do not per se lead to inefficient outcomes, and we see in mobile that MVNO access is granted by mobile operators on a commercial basis, and clearly ex post law is well established to deal with any individual or collective abuses, dominant position in any wholesale markets. And thirdly, I think that the debate around oligopolies or more broadly about the changes to the regulatory framework should also take into account these broader market trends which have profound impact on the sector. The internet-based players should be considered as important players within the value chain as services they provide and how they provide them, the business models they use, and they have a significant effect on the industry, the revenue pool, as mentioned earlier, on the financing of investments. So we think that a more detailed assessment of the OTT's market structure and how it affects and spill over to the telecommunications sector will be welcomed, and I know that's part of BEREC work program for 2015. Maybe I stop here and then save a bit more for the discussions.
Okay,
I think
so because we discussed
all the
also.
time was allocated to me.
Okay, so now, Matthias, the cable
Okay,
position.
the first message is I would like to join the camp of those speakers who said we don't need fundamental or revolutionary changes in the regulatory framework, and I believe it's still sound. And Elizabeth, I don't know this 86% you mentioned the second time of market share, but if somebody has 86%, whatever market it is, it's a single dominance, you know, it's not a joint one. Because if somebody has 86%, then obviously he is a single dominant player, you know. So and therefore I think we have a framework intact. But the markets I know, if we talk about broadband, obviously Europe is very diverse. You know, you have markets where cable is on equal footing with the incumbents, like in Netherlands, like in Belgium, like in maybe Portugal or other markets. But there are markets where there's no cable, you know, so we have completely different situations. So I think it's still important to do it case by case, you know, what the Commission did when it comes to the merger cases. So I strongly would advocate BEREC not to have a one-size-fits-all solution all over Europe, you know. To do it on a case-by-case basis is very sound, and if somebody has really a significant dominance, then we already have a framework which gives action for regulators. But that's not the case of this workshop. The case of this workshop is to say, do we need different rules when at least two fixed networks have a similar market share? And I think it's not an argument to say it's difficult to prove that there is joint dominance, so we have to change the rules to prove it easier, you know. So it would prefabricate the outcome, it would turn it upside down, and then you have to argue all these criteria which had been developed not by the way even by the European Commission, but they are developed by the European Court of Justice in Air Tours and Impala and others, you know, and so they have some high standard of credibility because it was part of these kind of legal fights. So they are sound, you know, and if you want to change these criteria, whatever they are, in a sector, you know, which is already very competitive, I think you already have to argue, why do we change it only for the telco sector? Why not for other sectors where you have a few players, you know? And, you know, Willem Eschweiler knows it. We have our decisions as a German regulator have to be sent to the cartel office by the German law, you know, and they always, sometimes we like it, sometimes we didn't like it, but they could criticize us. So, but the system was to say, regulation has to be in line with competition law, you know. So I think it would be extremely dangerous, and I think all colleagues in BEREC should consider that if we might have a sector-specific definition of competition. Joint dominance is defined by competition law, if we like it or not. It's part of a system which is embedded in European law, and that has to be kept. And I think the criteria, in my way, are sound. The other argument, if 2 players are not enough, we had this discussion. First of all, I always say, is it really true that we only have 2 players in infrastructure? Okay, sometimes we have no, in rural areas we have no player or no significant players, but in the areas where we talk about, where most concentrated people living, we have LTE, and it was mentioned by GSMA and others that LTE Advanced is also now, and we have markets like in Austria, as you know, that a lot of, I wonder what the market share of the mobile-only young kids are. I think Telekom Austria for years had a lot of problems because there are a lot of mobile-only people. And the WhatsApp system, by the way, goes over mobile. You only can use WhatsApp if you have a smartphone. And it's quite successful. And for my taste, if somebody is here in the mountains and do skiing, we talked about it, Mark. You even can use it to send your photos from the most remote areas in the mountains to your children, and the other way around. I think even the postcard industry might now under threat from WhatsApp. So and we don't know what what else is coming up. There are rumors that Google might enter the market. And a company like Google could work on a voice system and on other system. And Google, by the way, as well, could cooperate with infrastructure holders. And that's more or less, I think, the solution for the future. I think we all know that Apple, by the way, Apple, I used it more than, I have an iPhone, and there is FaceTime. Somebody pops up and said, okay, I talked with my nephew who is in Taiwan over FaceTime, So Apple has a system, WhatsApp, Skype, and others. So we see a lot of, I strongly would say, if these are the realities in the market, we should include that, whatever outcome it is. And what you said also is, are there other influences? And I believe content is also an influence, because if you want to have offers, because especially in TV, we see Netflix coming on the market. Netflix was quite successful in huge parts of Europe, had no problems of market entry, and immediate success in the video market. And so we have to think about other nice content, so sports rights, premium rights content, who has the ownership of that? And I think in the long run, and we talk about forward-looking regulation, that was a principle of regulation. We should not look, WhatsApp is already there, by the way, 700 million customers, Netflix is already there, so it's not forward-looking, we should think what's the next WhatsApp, what's the next Netflix, and what will happen if Google with their market power, and Apple are doing something. They even want to build cars now, but I think they have a lot of potential for innovation. And I think the future of this should be fit for these kind of circumstances, not looking always back, and I think Europe would run in a wrong direction. Last point, maybe, Juncker looks on investment. All of our colleagues said we need investment in infrastructure. And I wonder if it's 300 billion. I think the European Union only has 16, and the European Investment Bank has a little bit more, but not 300. So the rest of this investment should come from private companies. And one thing is for sure, these private companies can invest in Europe, in some of our countries, or they can invest somewhere else. And I think nobody likes to invest in a situation where immediately his network is open to competitors, especially if it's not necessary. And I think in this case, my members are extremely worried when they upgrade networks, like for DOCSIS 3.1, which could go up to gigabyte areas. And somebody would say, okay, if we make now a market for these high speed, maybe above 50 or so, you are dominant because you invested, and we want to have access. I think then there was a discussion in France about it, and everybody said, okay, if this is a consequence, we are the front runner in quality in some regions, and we have immediately free riders in our neck, we won't invest. Then we hold back our investment. And that's for sure not a theoretical discussion, because if a front runner, and this is what you said, the dynamic way of thinking, does also mean that if you are an innovator, and Apple is a classical example, In the beginning, Apple sold its iPhone only to one company. We might hate it or not, but Apple is a closed system and it was quite successful. So we have to think about, if we want to catch up with these kind of guys, Google or Apple, we have to think about innovation in another way, And I think some disadvantages we might have, and we could not open up investment which is forward-looking from the beginning. Maybe after some years, or maybe there are negotiations. By the way, last point, there are a lot of negotiations and now commercial agreements about next generation access networks. Some are pooling the forces, Vodafone with German Telecom, other operators are pooling, therefore they're joining a similar investment. We have nothing against that, but that's on commercial basis, especially in NGN. It's not on a regulated fee, and that's a fundamental difference between NGA and the legacy networks.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot to digest. Okay, let me start to see whether there are already some reactions and interventions from stakeholders in the floor. Some company who undertake some problem with joint dominance, some decision or regulator.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, excuse me to be again there. But just an additional, I would say, not information, but comment on the instruments which are currently available in the framework. The discussion is a little like if access regulation is uniquely related to market analysis and SMP at the moment, or joint dominance. De facto, it is not the case. If you look at the mobile industry, in the mobile industry, you have all the instrument of the license procedure, and in the license procedure, you may, and you do, as regulator and as a policymaker, introduce quite a lot of conditions, including conditions of access. And so this is a legal ground which exists and which is very used in this respect. So there is no need for further elements in this direction. Concerning the fixed part, and we in France, we know it very well, and they are much better experts than me in this room. There are, in the current framework, instruments of what is called symmetric regulation based on certain articles of the framework, which are the basis for cases where there is limited potential of duplication and which are sector specific and very specifically related to the, I would say, the technicalities of our sector. And we think if this is appropriate, it may be used. The question of whether or not it's appropriate is not what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is we do not need to invent or to distort existing concepts. And I fully agree with Matthias and with Stephen. Distorting joint dominance concept for the pure our sector would be very dangerous, and I hope it will not be possible.
So maybe one comment on the French case, that it's true that within the 4G, the last 3G license and the 4G license, there were some obligation from the MNOs to open to MVNOs to certain conditions. What we see is that because of the event in France with Free coming in the market and destabilizing everything and forcing MNOs to license, to restructure and to lay off people, we see that actually those rules that was imposed to the MNO was much lighter. And we saw that the MVNOs were quite late to launch 4G in France, years after at least 1 year for the first one, and 2 years for the smaller MVNO to launch 4G in the French market when it was supposed to be at the same time. Worse in UK, where EE has been, as you say, the first one to launch 4G in advance thanks to the merger. None of the MVNO has 4G today on EE network. Because they want to keep 4G for themselves, which we can understand them, but whether it's a good thing or not, I think we could discuss about that.